I never planned to buy my cousin's company, but Ethan never planned to stop mocking my tiny firm either. Life has a funny way of balancing the scales. The annual Carter family holiday gala was in full swing at my aunt's estate in Savannah. Jewel-toned docktails in hand, crystal chandeliers twinkling over designer shoes, and ego-drumming conversations. I sipped club soda from a vintage coupe glass, watching Ethan hold court by the grand piano. The acquisition's almost finalized, he boasted to a rapt audience of relatives. Once Stratuscorp merges with Nexlify Digital, I'll be overseeing the entire Northeast Division. I'm the star of this family, he declared, his voice dripping with Agnes, eyes scanning for admiration. He adjusted his cufflinks like he was in a cologne ad. Ethan had always known how. Our family lapped it up, especially my aunt, who beamed at him the way she used to when he won debate championships or interned on Capitol Hill. "What about you, Claire?" Uncle James asked, his tone laced with artificial sweetness. "Still running that little, what is it again, strategy service? You're still playing at that hobby, aren't you?" he added, his smirk barely concealed. I gave a polite nod, already picturing the legal team waiting for my signature the next morning. "Yes, still running my firm." Ethan chuckled without looking at me. "Still operating that tiny outfit, huh? How many people is it now?" 4, 5, 10, I said flatly, but didn't elaborate. "You're wasting your life, Claire," he taunted, his laugh drawing snickers from the crowd. "Let him think Vanguard Strategies was just a boutique consulting agency doing marketing plans for mom-and-pop shops. Let him think I was still the quiet cousin who quit corporate life in her early 30s with nothing but a laptop and a rented co-working desk." "You know, Claire," Ethan said, swirling his drink like a Bond villain, "I could speak to our VP at Nexlify, get you an actual role, something steady. You're what, 39 now? Stability is important. You need a real job, not a fantasy," he added, his tone patronizing, eyes gleaming with superiority. My mother gave a small, tight smile. "That's very kind, Ethan. You should take his offer, Claire," she added, her voice laced with pity, as if I were a failure. I clenched my glass a little tighter, recalling the acquisition contract sitting in my inbox at home, where Vanguard Strategies was preparing to finalize its majority stake in Nexlify Digital by the end of the month. "I appreciate it," I said evenly, "but I'm doing just fine." Ethan shrugged and turned back to his audience. "Anyway, everyone, guess who's showing up tonight? Nexlify's CEO, Robert Kane. He's basically family now. I brought him here to seal my legacy," he bragged, puffing out his chest. My gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Margaret clutched her pearls, nearly spilling her wine. The front door opened moments later, and there he was, flanked by 2 associates. Robert Kane scanned the crowd. Then his eyes landed on me. He walked straight over and extended his hand. "As Claire Carter," he said warmly. "It's good to see you again. Are we still on for tomorrow morning?" The room went silent. Ethan's smirk vanished. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, his voice low but audible, his face paling. "Absolutely," I replied. "I'm looking forward to finalizing everything. Robert Kane coming here." Ethan's voice practically dripped with self-satisfaction. Our aunt clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, Ethan, that's wonderful. What an honor." I glanced at my watch. 7:45 p.m. Right on schedule. I knew exactly why Robert Kane was attending our family's holiday party, and it had nothing to do with Ethan's exaggerated importance to Nexlify Digital. The room buzzed louder as Ethan continued parading his imaginary throne. With each pour of top-shelf bourbon, his claims grew more outlandish. He ranted about how he'd lead post-merger restructuring, streamline legacy systems, and revolutionize Nexlify's market approach. "Nexlify needs new energy," he declared, lifting his glass. "Kane's solid, but too traditional. Careful. I'm ready to take risks, make bold moves, lead. I'm the future of this company," he proclaimed, his voice echoing, oblivious to the storm brewing. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. The doorbell rang sharp and deliberate. At 7:50 p.m. Ethan adjusted his collar, motioning for everyone to compose themselves. "Okay, folks, let's keep it classy. Robert Kane isn't just my CEO. After this merger, he'll practically be family. I made this happen," he boasted, his ego blinding him to the truth. The grand double doors swung open. Robert Kane entered with quiet gravitas, his tailored overcoat draped elegantly over his arm. His silver hair gleamed under the foyer chandelier, and the room instinctively quieted at his presence. But instead of walking toward Ethan, his eyes scanned the room and then landed on me. He smiled. "Miss Carter," he said, striding past Ethan without so much as a nod. "Thank you for the invitation. I wanted to personally thank you for making this transition so seamless." Ethan blinked. "Sir, you know my cousin? Know her? She's the mastermind behind this deal," Robert replied, his tones sharp, cutting through Ethan's facade. Robert turned, genuinely puzzled. "Of course I do." He glanced between us, then addressed the room. "Claire Carter is the reason I'm here tonight. She's the one who acquired Nexlify Digital." Violence crashed over the room like a wave. Ethan's tumbler slipped from his hand and hit the Persian rug with a soft thud. "This is a lie," he shouted, his voice breaking, his face contorted with rage. My aunt gasped and steadied herself against the buffet table. Our uncle looked like someone had unplugged him. "That's not possible," Ethan whispered, voice hollow. "She runs some local firm, does marketing work for small shops." I gently placed my coupe glass on the mantel. "Actually, Cousin Vanguard Strategies is a bit more than that. We're a global acquisitions and restructuring firm, and as of yesterday, we hold the controlling stake in Nexlify." "You betrayed me," Ethan roared, stepping toward me, his fists clenched. The truth was out. The firm they'd laughed off for years. It wasn't tiny. It was massive, silent, strategic, powerful. While they hosted galas and traded war stories, I built an empire, one that now included Ethan's entire division. He looked like he might be sick. "As for your promotion," I said softly, "we'll be discussing some organizational changes." The silence in the room was crushing. You could almost hear the delicate machinery of pride, assumptions, and denial grinding to a halt in everyone's minds. Ethan still hadn't moved, his empty glass hanging limply from his fingers. Robert Kane, calm as ever, continued speaking as if he hadn't just shattered my cousin's entire worldview. "Excellent. Miss Carter's acquisition team was exceptionally sharp," he said, gesturing toward me with the kind of professional admiration my family had never once shown. The way Vanguard structured the buyout, timing, leverage, compliance, it was masterful. "She's outmaneuvered us all," he added, his voice firm, his respects undeniable. He glanced at Ethan. "Your cousin is one of the most strategic minds I've worked with." Ethan flushed from pale to crimson in seconds. "This is some kind of joke," he stammered, searching the room for backup. "Claire doesn't... she can't... What?" I asked, my voice even. "Can't run a multi-billion-dollar firm, can't outmaneuver a legacy board, can't be more than just your freelancing cousin who left a stable job to chase a pipe dream. You're nothing," he spathed, his voice trembling, desperation replacing his bravado. Our aunt finally spoke, her voice thin with disbelief. "Claire, darling, why didn't you say anything?" I turned slowly to face her. "Because none of you ever asked or wanted to hear it. Remember last New Year's?" I added, "when Ethan joked about my internet hobby and you all laughed like it was cute? Or the year before when Uncle James suggested I take community college classes to get back on track?" Uncle James winced. "We were just worried about you." "Worried I'd shine you all," I countered, my voice steady, my gaze unflinching. "Well," I said, swirling the last of my soda in the glass, "Vanguard Strategies now manages over 15 billion, zero in global assets. In the past 4 years, we've acquired 19 companies. That tiny firm just bought Nexlify Digital for 5 billion, 300 million, zero." Aunt Lillian gasped. Someone dropped a cookie platter. Ethan's face contorted like he might actually scream. "You can't do this," he hissed, stepping closer. "You can't just buy my company. I've worked there for 10 years. I'm supposed to be the next division director." Robert Kane cleared his throat. "About that?" "No," I said, cutting him off gently. "Let me handle this." I turned to Ethan, locking eyes. "We need to talk about your role at Nexlify." His voice cracked. "It's my role. I earned that promotion. You can't just walk in and—" "Your office?" I said firmly. "Now?" The crowd parted as I led him down the hallway. Behind us, murmurs and shocked whispers filled the space. Ethan slammed the door the moment we stepped inside. his executive mask crumbling fast. If you want to hear what I told Ethan behind that office door and how everything changed after, make sure to subscribe. The next chapter is where the real reckoning begins. How long? Ethan demanded, his voice sharp. How long have you been planning this? Was this your twisted revenge scheme? You've been plotting to destroy me? He accused, his eyes wild with panic. I calmly sat in the leather chair behind his desk, his prized possession, his symbol of status and control. It felt oddly fitting. Across from me, Ethan paced in tight, erratic lines, like a man trying to outrun the truth. Believe it or not, Ethan, I said, not everything is about you. Vanguard has been analyzing Nexla for years. The fact that you worked there, I shrugged. A curious coincidence. Coincidence? He gave a dry, bitter laugh. You expect me to believe that? You expect me to believe that, my son? Jealous, I scoffed, my voice cold. You're delusional, Ethan. Without a word, I opened my phone and navigated to my banking app. A few taps later, I held up the screen. His eyes locked onto the number and widened. That can't be real. It's my personal liquid net worth, I said evenly. The accessible portion. Vanguard Strategies is worth significantly more. So Ethan, remind me again, what does success look like to you? You're lying, he shouted, slamming his fist on the desk, his face contorted with disbelief. He sank into the guest chair across from me, the heat draining from his anger. His shoulders slumped. Why didn't you ever say anything? Would you have listened? I leaned back, folding my hands. You were all so sure I was failing. Remember when I missed Uncle James' birthday dinner, and you told everyone I probably couldn't afford to fly home, that I was too embarrassed to admit it? You said I was a nobody, I reminded him, my voice steady, each word a blade. His silence was answer enough. I was in Tokyo, I continued, negotiating the Harrington Industries acquisition, $3 billion, $200 million, but all of you assumed I was just making excuses. His face took on a pale greenish hue. The Harrington deal? That was you? He asked hilariously. Then the Jefferson merger last fall, the Wilson buyout last spring. Al Vanguard, I confirmed. We've been building a global empire in silence while you were too busy lecturing me about real jobs. You've humiliated me, he whispered, his voice breaking, tears welling in his eyes. He buried his face in his hands. And now, he whispered, you own Nexlife. You own my company. Yes. I stood and smoothed the front of my navy blue dress. And, as the new controlling partner, I have some concerns about the East Coast Division's leadership. His head snapped up. You wouldn't dare. I reached into my leather tote and pulled out a black folder I'd prepared days ago. Let's talk about your performance reviews, Ethan. The red flags, the compliance shortcuts, the missed deadlines. That's standard industry practice, he barked. No, I said, my voice low and firm. It's sloppy, it's arrogant. And under Vanguard's leadership, I said, sliding the folder into place, that ends now. Ethan slumped back in his chair, the fight in him visibly draining. So that's it? He muttered. You're firing me. Your own cousin? You think you can erase my career? He spat, his voice trembling with desperation. Not firing, I said calmly. I'm offering you a choice. I opened the folder and turned it toward him. You can take a lateral transfer to our Chicago branch, same pay, no promotion, fresh start, or you can resign and we'll provide a 4-month severance package. His mouth fell open. Chicago, but my life is here. My network, my condo, your inflated sense of importance. I offered your golf club access, your nameplate on the parking spot. Yes, you'd lose all of that. I locked eyes with him. But you'd keep your job. You reason. Ethan stared at the paper in front of him, his fingers trembling slightly. This is cruel, Claire, he whispered. Using your power like this. It's cruel. Cruel? I repeated, standing slowly. Like mocking my business at every family dinner was cruel. Like calling me a failure behind my back was cruel. Like suggesting I take a job as your assistant was cruel. You made me feel worthless, I said, my voice steady but sharp. Years of hurt spilling out. Through the heavy door I could still hear the party voices buzzing, music playing, the clink of glasses. No doubt they were still spinning the story, trying to rewrite history, pretending they'd always seen my potential. You have until Valentine's Day to decide, I said as I walked toward the door. Oh, and Ethan, I glanced back. That corner office you love so much. I'm turning it into a wellness lounge. You'll pay for this, he shouted, his voice cracking, but I didn't flinch. His face twisted, but I didn't wait for a reply. When I returned to the party, my parents were huddled near the fireplace with Aunt Lillian and Uncle Russ. Their conversation died the moment I stepped into view. My mother moved forward, her arms stretched for a hug. Claire, sweetheart, we had no idea. All this time? And you've been so successful, why didn't you tell us? You're our pride now, she gushed, her voice forced, her eyes darting nervously. I paused, stepping back slightly from her embrace. Would it have made a difference, Mom, if it wasn't flashy or public? Of course it would have, she said too quickly. We're your family. No, I said gently. You protect the secret of my last name. Family supports without needing proof. Family listens even when the story isn't impressive. You never believed in me, I said, my voice calm but piercing, holding her gaze. My father cleared his throat. Claire, we may have misjudged some things, but we always wanted what was best for you. Did you? I asked. Or did you want what looked best to your country club circle? You let Ethan belittle me for years, I added, my words cutting through their excuses. Robert Kane approached just then, saving them from having to reply. Miss Carter, he said with a polite smile, I'll be heading out. We've got an early session tomorrow to go over integration. Of course, I said, returning the smile. My team will have the paperwork on your desk by 8 o'clock. As he left, I heard my mother whisper to Aunt Lillian, Did you hear that? She has a team. She's made us look like fools, my mother muttered, her voice bitter, unaware I could hear, and I nearly laughed out loud. Now they were proud. Now they were curious. Now that my success was loud enough for their social circles to applaud, they finally wanted to listen. Ethan emerged from the hallway a few minutes later, dazed and unsteady, heading straight for the bar. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon with a trembling hand. You've ruined me, Claire, he muttered under his breath, his eyes avoiding mine. The moment his glass hit the counter, a swarm of cousins and uncles surrounded him, asking questions he couldn't answer. For once, he stayed silent. I gathered my clutch and coat. This wasn't how I had intended to reveal the truth. Not at a family gala, not so publicly, but maybe that made it better. It was clean, final, impossible to dismiss. Leaving already? My father asked as I reached for the front door. But we've barely spoken. You must tell us more about your firm, your acquisitions, your team. You're suddenly interested now? I asked, my tone sharp, my patience gone. I glanced at my watch. I've got a 5 a.m. flight to Singapore board meeting with a potential new acquisition. But it's New Year's, my mother cried. You don't get to claim me now, I snapped, my voice rising. Years of resentment boiling over. Yes, I said with a soft smile. And for the first time, you all truly understand why I won't be here. No more assumptions that I skipped family events out of shame. No more whisper campaigns suggesting I was broke, alone, or embarrassed. I'm leaving because I'm successful. Because I've built something extraordinary, and while you were too busy doubting me, I was too busy becoming someone who didn't need your belief. I paused at the door and turned one last time. Oh, and Ethan, remember when you offered to put in a word for me at Nexlify? I let the moment hang. Don't worry about it. I think I'll manage. You'll regret this, Claire, he whispered, his voice barely audible, his defeat palpable. A look on his face nearly made up for a decade of condescension. Almost. As I drove down the long, oak-lined driveway, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Congratulations, let's catch up. We always knew you were going places. I sent a single reply to the group. You never knew me at all. I deleted every one of them. They say success is the best revenge, but they're wrong. The real victory isn't buying the company your cousin swore he'd run. It isn't outmaneuvering your entire family at their own game. The real victory is never needing their approval to begin with. 4 months later, Ethan quietly accepted the Chicago position. My parents now introduced me as their visionary entrepreneur daughter, skipping the part where they once suggested I get an admin certification. You've shamed us, my mother texted once, her words a last attempt to guilt me. As for me, I had just finalized another acquisition, a modest tech firm based in Portland, Carter Dynamics, my father's retirement project. His pride and joy, the legacy he always dreamed determination would lead. "You stole my dream," he'd cried when I told him, his voice raw with betrayal. I had my assistant send over the ownership transfer letter. Sometimes silence says it best, especially when it comes with a header that reads, "From the desk of your tiny firm owner." If my story resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me if you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told your dreams were too small. What did you do about it? Your support means everything. I built something in silence, but now I'm speaking up. Not just for me, but for everyone who's been dismissed. Share your advice, your experiences, or a message you wish someone had told you when you started. And if you believe in quiet strength and long-game victories, hit subscribe. Let's keep proving that success doesn't need permission.